Welcome to the Korea Pro Podcast, your weekly guide to understanding the most pressing and complicated developments shaping South Korea. We're your hosts, Jungmin Kim,
John Lei,
and Joon Ha Park of Korea Pro.
Go beyond headlines as we explain not just what happened, but also what really matters and why it matters.
If you monitor South Korea for work or just trying to keep up, you're in the right place.
This is the Korea Pro Podcast.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of the Korea Pro Podcast. It is now Thursday, July 24th. We are recording this at around 3 p.m. And whoo boy, did I get a few things wrong this week.
Yeah, so the first thing that's on the agenda today, we've got the 2x2 that you did write about.
That was the executive briefing that went out this morning at 8 o'clock.
And they were postponed at the last minute because Besant canceled on his terms. What happened?
Okay, so to give a little bit of context, South Korea's finance minister and trade minister were already in D.C. The new industry minister was just about to board his plane to go. And all of a sudden, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's office said that there was a sudden schedule change. We don't quite know what that change is. But because of the schedule change, although initially a lot of South Korean media said that it was canceled, later on they changed it to it being postponed. But oh my God, this is such an absolute cluster because we have to keep in mind that the August 1st deadline
is creeping up.
It's not just creeping up. Both Bessent and Trump, and as well as Howard Lutnick, the U.S. Commerce Secretary, have said that it's a hard deadline. And this is really bad news for South Korea. So like I said, I got a few things wrong this week. Like on Tuesday, I wrote this analysis about how South Korea might be able to get a better deal from the U.S. because of how the Japanese Prime Minister and the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party, lost their elections on Sunday.
Sure.
But as it turns out, just yesterday, the U.S. announced that Japan's tariff rates went down from 25 to 15%.
Yeah.
And so, okay, that means that my analysis had a very short shelf life right there. And then this morning's executive briefing went out where I explained that on the negotiations are going to take place on Friday. And then after that went out a couple of hours later, this announcement came out that it's canceled or postponed. And so, yeah, Japan's tariff rates went down from 25 to 15%. Before that, Indonesia's tariff rates went down from 32 to 19%. Now, the Philippines were initially hit with 20%, and they got shaved off 1%, and now they're also at 19%. But right now, South Korea is the only real U.S. Pacific ally that is still stuck with 25%. And we don't know when this negotiation is going to take place anymore.
Yeah. Are they playing hardball with the Koreans? What's going on with the Washington folks?
Okay, so it is possible that the U.S. is playing hardball. Now, South Korea did not officially say this, but according to some media reports, which they claim they got from Korean government sources, apparently South Korean government officials are saying that there are going to be two red lines that they will not concede. And that is opening up the rice and the beef market.
Sure.
Now, we have to remember that among the deals that Japan conceded to get their tariff rates reduced was
rice.
They liberalized their rice market. They agreed to import American rice. Now, can you imagine how gleeful Donald Trump must have been to say, hey, I'm so good at trade deals that I sold rice to the Japanese. Ha, ha, ha.
Sure.
But yeah. South Korea is saying that rice is a no-go. Now, from South Korea's perspective, it's completely understandable. We had these floods. They devastated the farming regions.
Sure.
And already the farmers were up in arms with Trade Minister Yeon-go suggesting that maybe South Korea would be willing to make concessions in agriculture.
Lots of farmers were not happy about that.
They were pissed. And so apparently, that's the position that South Korea is taking. But if South Korea is saying we are not going to open up our rice and beef markets to the U.S., that limits our negotiation room. And so what that means is that we are going to have to come up with other ways to try to please the orange overlord in the White House.
And Japan, they agreed, or Trump announced that Japan agreed to invest in the Alaskan LNG pipeline deal.
In the LNG pipeline deal, and apparently $550 billion in investments. But again, we have to keep in mind just how shrewd the Japanese negotiators were, because they are already investing $750 billion in the US anyway.
Sure.
So this might be just a real nice thing that Donald Trump was able to say to his base. This is a historic deal. And sell it to the American public. And Japan gets what it wants. It gets a reduced tariff rate. Now, as for South Korea, South Korea has also said that that it was to take part in the LNG, the Alaskan LNG pipeline deal. But South Korea is also probably going to need to buy more things.
Indeed.
American fighter jets, American commercial jets, more LNG, and more business investments. So essentially what this means is that all these years where South Korea and the US debated, negotiated, and ratified the Korea-US free trade agreements, all of that is out the window now. None of that matters anymore. And now this is just my personal opinion going forward. But because the US now has a trust deficit, it doesn't matter if Donald Trump's going to stick around for the next 4 years or for the next 12 years or God knows how long he's going to be the US president. And it doesn't matter who his successor is going to be. The United States has shown that it is no longer a trusted or a trustworthy trade partner. And with many countries, South Korea included, being stuck between being tariffed by the United States and being flooded by Chinese imports. And a lot of these countries, including South Korea, are now in a position where they have to pivot away from both DC and Beijing. And this is going to have very long-term repercussions. It will not happen overnight. But over time, I cannot imagine a scenario where 15, 20 years down the line, South Korea will remain as committed to the U.S. alliance as it has been for the God knows how many past decades.
Sure. And does that bring us closer to China on a standpoint, would you say?
I think it will strengthen some people within the administration and within the Democratic Party who have been arguing that South Korea needs to have closer relations with China. But will it ultimately mean South Korea gets closer with China? That's anyone's guess. I think, hopefully, my hope is that over time, South Korea will try to diversify its relations with, say, Japan, Europe, Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia. Now, none of these markets will ever be able to balance out the US and the Chinese markets.
That's what I'm saying. It's a long overtime.
It's a long overtime. This will take decades. But this is the eventual process that I think South Korea and many countries in the world are going to be on now.
Well, on that bleak note, for another little bleak introduction into South Korean politics, Lee Jin-sook and Kang Sun-woo, the education minister nominee for Lee Jae-myung and the gender minister nominee for Lee Jae-myung, Lee Jin-sook's nomination was withdrawn by the presidential office, and Kang Sun-woo resigned from her nominated post. What do you make of that?
Okay, so Lee Jin-sook's withdrawal, that one was easy to really explain. Now, for a lot of people who might not be familiar with South Korean politics, now, just to recap, Lee Jin-sook was nominated to become the education minister. And among the things that had caused a scandal about her nomination was that she had been accused of academic plagiarism. Now, academic plagiarism, someone who has been accused of academic plagiarism becoming the education minister, not a good look.
And also plagiarizing her own students' work.
Exactly. And you and I know this, but academic plagiarism is a really sensitive topic in South Korean politics.
Absolutely, yeah.
We had a president impeached because of an accusation of plagiarism being the catalyst that started so many other investigations into Park Geun-hye's impeachment. And so, because of how much of a kryptonite that is in South Korean politics, that made sense. Now, Kang Sun-woo, on the other hand, okay, this one's a bit confusing for me.
Okay, why is that?
All right, so she has been accused of certain things like kapjil, for instance.
Sure, on her secretariat.
Kapjil, the Korean word for meaning for basically using one's authority to bully or to push people around, that kind of thing. Now, obviously, not a good look either. So I get why that might be something that caused her candidacy to be criticized. But the thing that I did not understand was the president's insistence on continuing to push for her nomination for gender minister despite her position on consent laws.
Yes, that was quite the controversy that surrounded sort of taking away from the whole capture standpoint of how she treated her secretaries. That's a whole different line, as you said. But especially for rape consent, the rape consent bill that was proposed to the National Assembly, her position on that was quite problematic. She was saying that there needs to be a social consensus on instigating a rape consent law into the South Korean legislations.
Now, for context, South Korean law at the moment does not include the lack of consent in how it defines rape.
Mm-hmm.
The law, as it states, that in order for a sexual intercourse act to be considered rape, there has to be a threat of violence and or intimidation. But if the victim does not retaliate physically or is not the victim of a physical attack, but does not say the word no, then the courts can say, because you didn't say no and there was no act of violence, it was not rape.
Right.
So obviously, this is a very old law. And there has been a push around the world to finally say that this consent must be a part of the legal definition of rape. Now, Kang Sun-woo was saying that despite a lot of push by activists to include that in the law, that it would not be a good idea to add consent, active consent, into the definition of the law. And she said that in order to do that, there needs to be, quote unquote, social consensus.
Yeah. And that seems to be quite the phrase that politicians, especially ruling party politicians, are pushing around for not only just this law, but the anti-discrimination law that's been long, long delayed.
Yep. The need for social consensus has always been the go-to phrase whenever politicians are given some sort of a legislative agenda that they don't want to pass.
And that they perceive could affect their approval rating in any way, shape, or form.
Now, again, I don't understand why this is an issue. No means no, yes means yes. And if an act of sexual intercourse occurs without explicit consent, I don't see why this should be a controversial thing that people are worried about passing.
Absolutely. That's why the whole controversy was building on Kang's comments that it needs a social consensus.
And the fact that this came from a politician within the supposedly progressive Democratic Party is just flabbergasting.
And I think that the presidential office's sort of insistence to push on with Kang Sun-woo's nomination before her eventual resignation, was seen in quite a lot of the public eye, or especially online, as something that did not fall into the sort of gender rights and sort of gender policies that the Lee Jae-myung administration or the Lee Jae-myung campaign was pushing for in the lead up to the June 3rd presidential election.
Yeah, Kang Sun-woo faced a lot of criticism from the progressive base. The former presidential candidate, Kwon Young-guk, from which party was it again?
Democratic Labor Party.
Thank you. The Democratic Labor Party. He actually wrote a scathing post on social media asking rhetorically, just why is she, what does she plan to accomplish as gender minister if she does not intend to pursue things that promote gender equality? And he wasn't the only person who was criticizing her. This came from a lot of progressive activist groups as well. And the criticisms were just mounting. And finally, Kang Sun-woo threw in the towel. She decided not to pursue with her nomination, which means that among the president's two female nominees for these prominent ministerial roles,
very high profile,
both of these candidates have either been withdrawn or chosen to withdraw.
It's not a good look for the presidential office in terms of how it will pursue its gender policies and also its education policies as well. The hope is that they actually go forward with good nominations this time that actually provide not a comment of we need a social consensus on the idea of a revision to the rape consent law, but, actually putting forward a position that many people can agree with.
Okay, let's move on to the next topic. Now, Juna, you just wrote a very interesting topic about how President Lee Jae-myung wants to reboot South Korea's defense and arms exports. Now, could you walk through our listeners and tell them what exactly you wrote?
Yeah, so President Lee Jae-myung, he proposed to create a sort of presidential office level control tower for South Korea's defense industry and defense exports. It's building on his sort of goal of reaching that sort of ambition that making South Korea this world's fourth largest defense exporter. And it's centralizing decision-making after South Korea's past failures in harnessing specific deals with Australia and also growing strategic challenges in securing these deals with Poland and Canada.
Okay, so my question for you is that, sure, South Korea didn't win every single arms export bid. No one can win them all. But South Korea has made a lot of significant progress. Besides Poland, which has been the biggest export to Europe, South Korea has also sold missiles to the UAE, to Saudi Arabia, and they've been selling weapons to Southeast Asian countries for decades. Why now? Why is this control tower, this presidential office control tower, suddenly something that Lee Jae-myung wants to pursue?
Well, DAPA, the Defense Acquisition Program Administration that currently is in charge of handling these export deals, is not a high-level government office. It's a secondary level government office that's under the Ministry of Defense. And it cannot really have that sort of diplomatic leverage in doing government-to-government export deal talks. That's why the sort of company or industry-level talks or the industry-level separation that went on in the Australia deal for the Australian destroyer deal and South Korea's eventual failure to Germany and Japan in securing that deal sort of fell through without DAPA's centralized leadership.
Okay, but to play devil's advocate, sure. There were also cost financing issues, and that wasn't just with Australia. It was definitely with Poland as well, and that was a big issue when there was a change in government in Warsaw. But regarding that destroyer issue that you mentioned just now with Australia, we also have to keep in mind that no matter how centralized South Korea tries to make this, all defense export plans are inherently political, right? And Australia, despite wanting to have closer relations with South Korea, also needs to have closer relations with Japan. They are both parts of the Quad. And so would South Korea have even been successful with this destroyer sale had the South Korean government or the South Korean presidential office been able to coordinate between Hanwha Ocean and Hyundai Heavy Industries?
Yeah, I can't play what ifs on what went on at the time. We could have seen a bunch of different factors come into play, as you mentioned, political factors with the whole Quad connection between Japan and Australia, and also Australia and Germany as well, which they also have significant diplomatic relations. So I don't know what South Korea will have done to step up that diplomatic sort of ties between the two, between that sort of triangle. But what I know for sure is that this sort of presidential office control tower, if it goes into effect as proposed by Lee Jae-myung, it needs to move beyond the government-to-government sort of export deal and the diplomatic relations bit. It has export financing in the books where South Korea's, the experts that I talked to, they mentioned that export financing, especially with deals with massive multi-billion-dollar deals with Poland, the South Korean government needs to help out these industries and needs to help out with these deals in order to pay for them.
So in essence, South Korea is giving it the old college try. All right, and we're going to move on real quick. Now, I need to promote one more piece that was published on Korea Pro this week, and this was a banger of an investigative piece written by our founder and CEO, Chad O'Carroll, along with former NK News reporter Ifang Bremer. Now, this investigative piece, it goes into how the Korea Foundation, which is a South Korean government-affiliated nonprofit that funds things like cultural, academic, and policy programs in overseas countries to try to promote South Korea's interests. Well, this investigative piece goes into how the Korea Foundation had, over the years, directed more than $9 million to various U.S. policy institutes, and all the while maintaining that they are, all the while KF, Korea Foundation, was maintaining close coordination with South Korea's foreign ministry. And so what this investigation really does is that it raises serious questions about transparency, influence, and whether the Korea Foundation should be registered under the U.S. Foreign Agents Registration Act. And so if you are interested in how South Korea conducts public diplomacy with Washington, and where the legal gray zones are. This piece is essential reading. Now, this piece has been taken off the paywall, at least for the next few days. So if you want to read it, you can check it out at koreapro.org.
Looking to stay informed about South Korea's fast-evolving political, business and cultural landscape? Join us on Korea Pro, the go-to resource for in-depth analysis expertly curated by top-tier professionals. And now you can pick the membership level that best suits your needs, thanks to our new subscription packages. Starting at just $199 annually, you can access daily analysis and our weekly podcast. Or try our premium membership package, which offers additional perks such as executive briefings, monthly reports and forecasts, networking receptions and event opportunities, as well as much, much more. To find the best fit for you, just head to signup.koreapro.org and become a member today.
Week ahead. So the tariff 2x2 date is still undecided. Besant, as we mentioned, has cancelled, but it is expected within the coming week if something does come into fruition between the two parties. Whether that comes into fruition, we still have to wait and see, but of course we will include that in the week ahead, going out next Monday. And the Korean War Armistice anniversary will be held this Sunday, where it will be July 27th, the 72nd anniversary, which will mark the end of sort of the armistice agreement between UN forces and the North Korean forces to have a ceasefire at the end of the war.
Somewhere out there, China is saying, we were part of the war too.
Okay, Beijing. And then confirmation reports for unification, veterans, and defense ministers are yet to be adopted by the National Assembly. Of course, it is this sort of formality.
At this point, it's just a rubber stamp.
It's just a rubber stamp, as you just said. And when that is adopted, or if not adopted by the end of this week, the president will confirm these ministers immediately, especially the defense minister, as there has been a lack of leadership between the defense ministry and the actual military leadership for the past 6 months. And the ongoing special probes of the Yoon-era cases, so including probes into the former First Lady Kim Gon-hee and the self-proclaimed political broker Myung Tae-gyun and how they allegedly changed the political elections of the day, the presidential office's involvement in the death of the ROK Marine in 2023, July, and martial law suspicions still ongoing.
And all of this information will be sent to your email inboxes by Monday at 2 p.m. So if you'd like to know more, please subscribe. Have a good weekend, everyone.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We'll brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why it matters, delivered to your inbox every morning.
If you want to stay ahead of the curve, sign up for Korea Pro to get a full package of insights, from daily expert analysis to profiles, month in review, week ahead, and more.
And until next time, I'm Jungmin Kim.
I'm Joon Ha Park.
And I'm John Lee, and we'll see you next time on the Korea Pro Podcast.